Hail cheaters! Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here with Brandon. Brandon, how are you?
I'm good. I think this is going to be an episode, Josh, where I have to lift you up. I'm not sure.
Possible.
Do you ever lift me up in the podcast? I feel like sometimes you sort of give me like the fatherly wisdom of like, you should pull yourself up, that sort of a thing. Yeah.
I don't know about that. You don't listen to me. That's really that's why I don't
which
do it.
Which reinforces the father-son dynamic, doesn't it?
Yeah, that is true, actually. It's but I would say you've been able to, you are more of an emotional support person. And I think my support is more strategic. You know, I feel like if I were to offer support, it would not be chin up. You know, actually, I do that offline when I feel like your energy is bad on a podcast. But even then, that's sort of framed within like a kind of like a marketing speak, right? It's like it's important to the pod that your energy is good.
We've got a brand to uphold. And speaking of, we'll say the name of the podcast. It's the Always Cheating Podcast. We're in the midst of game week 34. We need to talk about where we are in the midst of this game week with our points and our rank. But even bigger news, of course, is that you and I are both going to be triggering our wild cards this week as we look at the Chelsea Spurs double. We're going to have to get ourselves pumped up to play these wild cards. And it's very confusing. We both put some drafts together. And like, okay,
I accidentally deleted mine. So we have your draft, but that's fine.
It putting the draft together just posed lots of like questions I was not ready to answer. Like, what do I think about Manchester United? I mean, their result against, not the result, but just the performance against Coventry sort of like tells you everything there is to know. And I'm not sure what there is to know about where we are with Manchester United now. And like, what are we doing with Man City assets? And
they scored goals. I guess that's something.
That is something, yeah. So it's sort of like as you look ahead to the late wild card or just this continuation of the home stretch, it's just like we need attacking assets. I don't know what to tell you about defenders.
I think that's really the case. I think I was surprised. I could find midfielder after midfielder that I wanted. I actually think there is a way to do it defensively that might make sense, which is basically to have one Man City defender and two Newcastle defenders. I think that might be the move there. And that, but then you're sort of in a position where you're like, okay, so does that, like, what do I do? Because you and I both have bench boosts, to play as well. And so, one of the ways to get, for example, a couple, because Chelsea is another problem. Well, anyway, the thing is, we got to be careful with this one because we could get in the weeds very quickly. So this
could be personal problems. A lot of people already wild carded.
A lot of people. Exactly. You and I are in a unique spot.
It's funny. Leela and I were driving around the great city of Toronto, and she was suggesting, I wonder if Toronto is like maybe 50 years behind New York City for whatever that means. Now that wasn't necessarily a dig. It's just sort of like, of course
that's, I wonder if Toronto is stuck in the 1970s. I don't mean that in a bad way.
Well, I don't know if being in the year 2024 is a place that some people want to be, that's what we're saying. But you and I, to an extent, I feel like we're 50 years behind the people who like wild carded.
You're right.
30,
I don't want to get caught up in this 1970s talk here. I think we are. I think you and I would say sometimes when I do this on the pod, people don't like it or they think that I'm genuinely upset. And so let me tell you about my perspective here, which is that I am an FPL compartmentalizer, right? So I can, when I'm watching matches with you and we're at the bar or whatever, right? Or we're talking and we're doing a pod, I can get very, very upset and frustrated about fantasy in a way that is genuine. Like it's I'm not like, I'm not hamming it up,
dude.
It's raw. Exactly. But it's really specifically within the context of this, right? I would never like go to like for example, I like my soccer captaincy, which I went for this week, right? That blew up on me. I didn't actually, in the end, it didn't because I scored solid by two. But at the moment, right at the time on Saturday, I was like, what a disaster. It's like, I mean, I didn't know that Salah was going to get benched. Right. And I was like, well, I just like, I kind of screwed this up. But I had there was like a picnic in the park with some of my kids, like school friends and parents and stuff. And it was like, that part of me doesn't exist, right? It's like among those people, it's like, what fantasy, right? It's like, I don't want to I mean, people know I have a pod, but it's just like, you have to like break this stuff down. So I will say within the context of fantasy, I basically started the season at a 10 out of 10 on the frustration scale. And I've kind of stayed there for 35 weeks. And like, I don't know that that's a great place to be making good strategic decisions, right? I feel like, and I feel like because I have been like sort of metaphorically like hyperventilating about fantasy for, a year, like approaching a calendar year. I don't think I have been making good decisions. And I think this week was another example of it. And I've just done some stuff that like I've never done before, like missing not making a transfer I'd planned to make, not making one in time ahead of a price rise when I knew I had to make it in time. And, just these little things. And so and those are like all like little mistakes. But I think the problem is they've all, they feed on each other. Right. And so then it's like, I get like in my head a little bit, and so I don't even think I've played especially passively, but I don't think I've played super intelligently, right? Like, I mean, I think going for Saka over Salah as a captaincy would be considered an attacking move, right? Sure. Like, I don't think, so I think that like there are, I think I'm still doing that, but I'm not
Dean Henderson move on the other hand.
I mean, we talked about it on Thursday. I don't, it was like, I mean, I was sort of, I was looking at Crystal Palace assets the same way as everybody else. And then I was sort of, I've been in this position with Semenyo where I don't really want to have him. And I was planning to drop him for Mateta. And then it came out that he was okay. He should be fit. Bournemouth have all these injury problems. And so I was like, well, maybe he actually is going to start, like, because they kind of need him to start. And so I was like, and also like, I mean, yeah, after today, it's like, oh yeah, Mateta's like, better than Erling Haaland or whatever, right? But it's like, going into this weekend, 5 million Mateta, who none of us have owned the entire season, there was at least some element of risk. And I really get frustrated when people like play the hindsight game. It's like, oh, we always knew he was going to go off for 15 points today, right? It was always going to happen. It was like, well, not necessarily, because like they're like a pretty bad team, and they found like a little bit of form. I mean, they effectively got their ass kicked by Liverpool and came away with a win, right? And so I don't mean to like go in and dig in on Crystal Palace here too much, but like
it's too late. You're already there, my friend.
I'm already there, but I don't mean anything personal by it. I'm just this is a extension of my own frustration.
As a couple of guys who found themselves next to some Palace supporters at Selhurst Park, we know better than to ruffle their feathers.
Yeah, exactly. Great fans.
I value
a lot of intensity. It's all good. Love South London, but or whatever that is, south of London. We consider. I mean, it is South London,
yes,
right?
That's right.
Yeah, it still counts, right? We had to get on an actual train to get there, so it felt like we were
above ground train. That's right.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the equivalent of going to like Staten Island in New York or something like that.
Yeah. To give Palace its proper due, though, they were the team that altered this game week so far. Game week 34 is defined by the attacking assets of Crystal Palace. And it's just like a couple times a season, you get this where every single possible permutation works with the attacking assets. Now, the Mitchell, Munoz, and Henderson all blew up in everybody's faces, unfortunately, and you couldn't predict that.
I mean, a -1 for Henderson. I mean, come on, like absolutely absurd.
It's really rotten. It's really rotten luck for you and also for Mitchell owners too. But the way that Eze and Olise and Mateta played, they just looked like total ballers. And it was really fun to watch.
Yeah, and like, and credit to Palace. I probably didn't need to go in on them the way that I did. I'm just annoyed, and like also because I went for Luis Diaz, it meant I couldn't get Eze, and so that was like Luis. I mean, just the way, like I just don't want to sound like bad beat guy, and it's like it's hard to resist, but it's just like the way I have been bringing in players at the absolute last seconds of their form. Like the second I buy them, this just happened to me with Gordon and Isak and my like Newcastle defensive double up and it just like in Diaz now, and it's just it is like driving me crazy. And so but again, I don't want to complain. So I've had a really bad game week. I don't see it getting any better. I kind of just want the season to be over. That's where I am. But I do have a wild card to bench boost left to play. You, on the other hand, made some good strategic moves. I mean, if anything, the only regret probably is that you didn't take a -8 for Trent, right? But otherwise, it was good.
Yeah, definitely. There was a way for me to have played it perfectly. So I'm just going to share my screen here, and I'm on 47 with a hit to bring me down to 43 net. And I took a -4 to move Rodrigo Muniz to Mateta. I moved Heung-min Son to Luis Diaz, and then I did the conservative play of moving injured Sven Botman to Virgil. Now, I did not, with bringing in Luis Diaz, I didn't have the money to bring in Trent Alexander-Arnold because you and I decided on Thursday, we were pretty confident we'd get 2 starts out of Trent this game week, and it very much looks to be the case, and he looked very fit and
great goal.
I scored an amazing goal, and I think he'll be stoked to line up for the Merseyside derby. So, I obviously the hindsight, what the moves were to go Olise or Eze over Luis Diaz, and then it would be Mateta, Palace midfielder, and then Trent in the back. That would have been the perfect formulation. And then the -8, I was honestly still considering Jordan Pickford for a goalkeeper, and I opted to just get Leno. Now, if the PGMOL gets their comeuppance, Josh, there will be a retroactive penalty given to Forest, and all Everton clean sheets will be wiped out.
The dumbest, like, I'm sorry, but like, give me a break. Like, I mean, I'm not like some Stuart Atwell, super fan or whatever, but the idea that like he's an established Premier League referee, right? Like the idea that he would just be sitting in that booth just systematically denying Forest chance in a 2-0 loss, right? It wasn't like it was like, it wasn't like a 0-0 and Everton got a pen late or something. It was like
Forest,
absurd.
Yeah. Forest, a club that's already taking points hits for themselves being corrupt. So like, please pack your bags and go. We're not here for it. So the logic was, keep Leno, see if I could get some save points out of it. And then Virgil was, the belief was that Liverpool were going to really come good in game week 34, despite the rocky form defensively and their profligacy. There's that word again, Josh, in front of goal.
Profligacy,
and we just didn't get it right. Salah and Luis Diaz, who felt like the most secure options. It was all about Diogo Jota. Now, we are still in the midst of this game week, so the story could really change for both of us, Josh. Saka has a great fixture coming up at home against Chelsea, whose defense is quite porous. So your captaincy could come good. You would think Salah is definitely sure to start against Everton midweeks. Both of our captains still in play. And hey, Dean Henderson, maybe he gets a pen save. I'm daring to dream for you. For me,
I respect you at least trying to plant a seed of that stops us from being a horror movie the way it has been. But
I guess the differential for me is you have a lot more doublers still to go, and my differential is playing the singlers and Cole Palmer and Erling Haaland. You're playing Haaland as well. But
I got Haaland too. I mean, he's gone to 60% effective ownership, so his it's a nice opportunity to actually get some points from that will matter for Haaland. At least that's on Thursday too. Yeah, I'm going to be in Rome this week, so it's going to be very. Nice. I'm leaving tomorrow to head out there, so it's going to be. I'm going to try to find if anybody knows a Roman, I don't know, like what would you call them? Like football pub, right? In Rome, like a pub. What's the word for bar in Italian? I should know that, but so we're gonna
say a bar, a town pump.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put the family to bed, and then I'm gonna go because it'll be great because unlike here in America where these matches are on at 2:45, right? We're gonna have a chance. It'll be 8:00 at night. It'd be great, but you know how it is on vacation. It's like your day starts so early that usually even if we're like in a great city and we're traveling, I feel like I'm often back by like 8:30, because you just get so fried.
True. Yeah, totally. But kudos to the free hitters this week. It turned out to be that was huge for them, especially if you went all in on Palace and.
Totally. Exactly. And I probably went a little rambly with my little bit there. The thing is, like, the pod isn't just about me and my team, right? It's like we can still talk about fantasy and the experience of it. And sometimes the experience isn't great, right? And so it's also like it's all good, So we're powering through.
That is what always cheating is. What is life like to be a fantasy manager?
Yes.
We've got no Excel grids to show you. We've just got our bleeding hearts.
Yeah, Monty Python style, Brandon. We're going to look at the bright side of life, as much as we can. So, all right. So we checked in on 34, but like you said before, the real question for us is what do we want to do for 35, right? And so, in some ways, this would be a very tricky podcast if we weren't on a wild card, right? Because there's so many matches still to play, and players are going to get injured. There's going to be drama over the next handful of days, no doubt, right? Mm-hmm. But on a wild card, you've got to start doing this thinking early. And I want to kind of just dive right into it here in a second, but I did want to just do a quick shout out to our Patreon supporters, Brandon. There's a channel on our Discord that's Josh's team. And I've been using that as an opportunity to basically turn into Hamlet on there and just do long, rambly, woe is me posts. It's a good way to get out of my system, and then I feel like I'm contributing to the Discord as well. Because at least I'm producing some sort of
entertainment,
communication. Yeah, because people respond, and then I respond to those responses and whatever. So, but thank you so much to everyone who supports the podcast all season long. 500 plus of you, really genuinely appreciate it. And I want to, we're still doing the podcast throughout the rest of the season, and you can get an extra podcast each week. You'll get access to our Discord. We had was that patron old or new, Brent? I thought that was old I did not add a new patron this week. So I saw you put your hand up, like, oh, maybe I was deleting that as we were talking.
Oh, no, you misread my hand signals. Paul Robertson, if you're new, if you're old, we just wanted to say hello.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Robbie's son, perhaps, may he rest in peace, Robbie Robertson. Yeah. So, but you get an extra podcast each week, get on the Discord, you get access to lots of contests that we do and lots of meetups all across the country. So patreon.com/alwayscheating is where you can go. We've been dropping that a little late in the pod, so I wanted to put that right on top and mention briefly as well that we don't charge people when we're in our off season. So if you support us now during June, we don't charge any patrons for that month. So Brandon, let's move on to Game Week 35 though. It's a big one. It's I guess in some ways it's as big as 34. I mean, 34 feels like it's the more hyped double, right? Maybe because you've got Liverpool and Arsenal, and 37, you've got an unusual mix of teams, right? You've got some big ones for sure, right? I mean, Chelsea, Spurs, Man City, but then you've got a Brighton thrown in there. It's a little kind of a tricky squad. I mean, I think Spurs honestly, I think all the squads are a little tricky when it comes right down to it. I mean, you look at Spurs and you're like, you're like, okay, great. Spurs double twice, right? They have 6 fixtures in the final 4 game weeks. All right, we got to triple up on Spurs. And then you're like, okay, Sun. Once you get past Sun, you're kind of immediately in a tricky spot. So we'll walk through all the teams that play twice and 3 times, or that have one double game week or 2 over the next 4 weeks. And then I wanted to just walk through I kind of do it a little bit like we did for 34. So I guess it'll be kind of specifically for people who are wild carding, though, of course, anybody who is just looking at transfers, it's useful to know kind of who some of the top keepers, defenders, mids, forwards are to sort of look at over the next couple of weeks. So, and by the way, this is like one of the last times we're going to get to do this, right? Because the FA Cup changes are going to, and the lack of replays, it's going to be, quite a big change in terms of double game weeks moving forward. And I think you and I are actually like a little excited about this, to be totally honest. But it's mixed feelings, I think, in the FPL community.
Do we know for a fact though that it's going to eliminate these double game weeks? Because like this double game week is happening not because of replays, but just because the semifinals are happening this weekend, and it like moves the schedule around a bit.
I think the semifinals and the League Cup final will still lead to double game weeks, but in general, I mean, this is per like, the people who've dug into this even more deeply than I have, right? But that sounds like, so we should have at least 2. I feel like we'll have at least 3 because something's going to happen. Another Royal is going to unfortunately pass away, or there's going to be a snowstorm, or this is a pretty common thing even pre-COVID, right? Something happens and you get a double. I think the Club World Cup is actually in the summer, so you won't even have the that one, right? That's why Man City had a double 10 weeks ago, right? So we'll see. I mean, I think that we'll end up with 3 or 4 still, but it won't be quite as crazy as these ones are.
It's true. The cheaters are in favor of the simplicity, the simplest possible distillation of FPL. And if we could just focus on one meaningful transfer per week and a good old captaincy decision, a captaincy debate, that's really what we're after. Are we after a situation in which Ollie Watkins, who will be like the player of the season, have the most points in FPL, is suddenly completely irrelevant to the game? That's not... And I guess that's debatable, just given the run that he continues to be on. But that's really not the game we're interested in playing.
And it's too bad because, they don't really have a great... I don't know. He's good in every match. It doesn't really matter. I mean, they have 2 home matches, 2 away matches. Not so bad. Away to Palace in 38. Maybe we get Ollie for that one. Maybe that's like our final. But I will say, putting my squad together for 35, I have no Watkins, no Villa in my squad. So just to kind of look a little more broadly here, and why don't I share, Brandon, our good friends at the Hub have a little fixture calendar, and so why don't I share it? I appreciate some of the comments, by the way, in the chat. There's Brian Chin and others. Some chin up talk, Brandon. Got to keep those chins up. All right.
Producer Chris is in the chat. Great to see him. We have scant interactions with him, but he's been a long-time producer of the pod.
Yes. And so, I only half heard you because I was busy. I'm still technologically. No, I heard that. Yeah. Welcome, Chris. It's like reading Rainbow, Brandon. It's like, who do we look out and see in the audience? So we have in game week. Well, okay, so let me just reset here a little bit. So we have 2 teams that play twice, right, over the last 4 weeks. You have Spurs, who play Villa at home, or excuse me, Villa away and Spurs at home. And I feel like I really need a proper reset here. So let me do this one more time, Brandon.
You got it. You got this, buddy.
Chelsea and Spurs, they play twice. They play 6 times. They have 2 double game weeks. This is why I'm not going to miss double game week talk, because it makes stuff very complicated. So Chelsea and Spurs have 2 double game weeks to make up, right? One in game week 35. So in other words, the game week that starts this coming weekend, and then another one in 37, which is when a lot of clubs play twice. Yeah. I will also caution that game week 7 is a notoriously difficult double game week to prepare for. And I think a team like Brighton will be an especially tricky club to target. They're one of the clubs that play twice in 37, because teams that have nothing to play for in 37 often use it as an opportunity to play some youngsters or do some heavy rotation.
De Zerbi likes to rotate even when he has something to play for.
I know, exactly. There's really almost no one you'd really want to. Brighton, I think, are just completely off the table, honestly. They don't have good fixtures either, which makes it a little easier, perhaps. So Chelsea, they play. They're double in 35. They play Villa away and Spurs at home. Not great. Fine for Cole Palmer, right? Not ideal for the rest of the team. Not great for Chelsea defense, I wouldn't think. We'll see what kind of performance they put in against Arsenal in a couple days. West Ham home, sure, good fixture in 36. And then 2 away fixtures in their other double in 37. They play away to Forest and away to Brighton. Now, again, see some goal scoring opportunities there. See them conceding in both of those matches as well. Right. It's sort of tricky. I mean, maybe you bring in a Malo Gusto or something like that and just see him as like having like another midfielder on the pitch, and maybe you luck your way into some returns. I mean, in 37, I plan to bench boost, right? So I'm going to need somebody to fill out those spots, and I think that's something we can get into a little bit more. I mean, like for example, like Wolves have. Like Everton have Sheffield United at home, right? That's like a real like 6-pointer. You good chance of a clean sheet there. Maybe you just stick one of Everton's 4 million defenders on your deep in your bench instead on your wild card, right?
Sheffield United is going to be down by game week 37.
Yeah, that's true.
But nonetheless,
Everton might not be solidly
correct.
Up, though.
That's correct. Yeah. That's correct.
Yeah. Well, if Stuart Atwell has his way, maybe they will be.
Conspiracy is afoot. Yeah, I mean, the goalkeepers are always, when you're preparing for a bench boost, always the most vexing thing. And I was just looking at, well, what 2 goalkeepers do I bring in on a wild card now with a bench boost in 37 in mind? And the draft I quickly put together, I ended up with something that would make me think, should I be bench boosting in 35? Because I got Petrovic from Chelsea and Vicario at Spurs.
Yep.
And I think the defensive picks are going to be really, we're going to struggle with them. Spurs and Chelsea are so singular in their attack. It's Cole Palmer and it's Son. Now, and do you make space for somebody like Brennan Johnson? So here's another thing that kind of dawned on me as I was like working on a quick wild card was, when you're looking at your team for 35 into 37, remember that you're going to be able to make a few transfers after game week 35. Right. Maybe, I'm thinking like, well, I don't need Brennan Johnson because I've got like the perfect 5 midfielders I've got Foden, Palmer, Bruno Fernandes, Gordon, and Son. Now that's like frozen in time who I would want for the rest of the season. Right. But that's missing the point that I can make some free transfers and start chopping and changing. Maybe I have a Salah or a Saka in one of those game weeks. Maybe I do have Brennan Johnson and Son going into game week 35.
I know.
So there's a layer of complexity now.
Yeah, I think because Newcastle and Man United both have really good 35 fixtures, right? The two teams that don't double in 35 but do double in 37. Newcastle plays Sheffield United at home. Man United have Burnley at home, right? So Man United, I don't know what we're going to – they will actually play one more time before 35. So maybe we'll have an opportunity to kind of
evaluate.
I don't know. Get a read on them. Like, I don't know what kind of read we're gonna get. It's it's gonna be a little tricky. Let's see. When do they play? They play on Wednesday evening. They host Sheffield United at home. So I guess that is like a good palate cleanser sort of match for them. Bruno's scored a couple. I don't know.
Yeah, he is really coming back into form.
Yeah. Not that expensive
for sure. I kind of am excited for anyone who went for Sheffield United assets on a free hit or just has one, because what a perfect time for them to play Manchester United after like grinding out this pin victory against Coventry on Sunday. And then they play Wednesday.
Yeah.
It's going to be pretty brutal as far as the schedule goes for them.
Yeah, and I was happy. They got a goal, didn't they? In their match as well. I'm trying to remember who they
did. Hamer scored the goal.
Hamer, that's what it was. Your boy.
Yeah, I do love me some Hamer. So we've got Hamer. a lot of decisions. So you talked about compartmentalizing. You were talking about that in terms of your emotions. But can we figure out a way to compartmentalize as we do this wild card planning and think about 35 in one little compartment and 37 in another? How exactly are you planning to approach the wild card?
I think it's hard to do because you have the two teams that play twice, right? And so it's hard to completely compartmentalize because it feels wrong to me, although maybe I can talk myself out of it in the coming days, to not have 6 players from Spurs and from Chelsea. So, but just to briefly to finish off on the other teams that double, just to give to fill out the picture here a little bit. You have Chelsea and Spurs, and then you have Brighton, Man City, who we've like kind of barely talked about, right? But they have a double, and they are obviously they can't drop any points the rest of the season if they want to win the league, right? And so it's or most likely at least. And so very important for them to keep playing. Unlike last year, right, where they won the league in April, and it was just kind of like a slow walked. I mean, maybe it was in April, it was like early May, whenever Arsenal like officially finished their collapse, right? But it was like down the stretch there, Man City wasn't playing anybody that was, it was just like, it was because they were playing for the Champions League, right? It was their first chance to win a Champions League. And so they were just, I don't even think Ederson started like the last 2 or 3 matches.
Yeah, it was Ortega's season then.
Yeah. So it won't be like that for Man City this time around. So it's a little easier to target their assets. Man United, who again, a real wild card, but they at least have obviously some talented players. I mean, again, one of your boys, and along with Hamer, Harry Maguire scored today too, Brennan. So I was happy for you. I thought of you when he scored, and and then you have, and then
big day at the Brandon Kelly household. Big day.
Yeah, big day. The final club is Newcastle, and they have arguably the best run of matches to close out the season. They have been a somewhat unpredictable team, clearly, at times this season. It felt like their defense was utterly porous, and then they've kept back-to-back clean sheets, right? So Isak has been awesome, but now Callum Wilson is back in training, spotted on the pitch. So a little bit of worry there. Gordon's great, but he's got a little bit of competition as well. So
what competition does he have? Come on.
Harvey Barnes, is he like this? Is he chopped liver?
Yes.
Barnes is decent. I kind of like Gordon. Harvey Barnes.
Gordon has been the beating heart of this Newcastle team. There's no way he gets dropped. I think the Newcastle question for me is the easiest one to answer.
I'm so excited you banged your microphone.
Yeah. I'm hitting all my audio equipment here. Yeah. The players pick themselves. I'll just here, write this down. Schär, Gordon, Isak. You're done. There's your 3 Newcastle. No problem.
No, well, I don't actually necessarily agree with you there, because I think it is a little complicated because there's so many midfield options, and I think it might make more sense to go Isak, Schär, and Dan Burn as your 3. I think it might be a little easier to make a team that works if you go Burn over Gordon. So a little bit of drama there, Brandon. We're a little bit, I like it when we're not simpatico. That's
Mommy
always
and Daddy
fun.
Are fighting.
Yeah, exactly. I look forward to giving you more advice you won't listen to shortly. But let's go through. I wanted to talk about it by position, but maybe it actually makes more sense to just go through this by club, at least for Chelsea and Spurs, right? So Chelsea, everyone will have Cole Palmer. That's a given. He's obviously in like as good a form as arguably like Haaland was last season. Like he's just been playing incredibly well, and it's honestly been playing that well since October, right? It's not like it's a flash in the pan. He has been absolutely extraordinary the entire season, and so he is. I think it'll be interesting because the fixtures for Chelsea and for Spurs in 35 are not great. Most of us will probably default to Cole Palmer as our captaincy. It would be fun if you had Son as a kind of competing option, but their fixtures are worse, right? I mean, they have to play Arsenal. Arsenal have an excellent defense. They play away to Chelsea, so not better, I guess. But again, if you're thinking about would I rather have Cole Palmer right in a home match versus Son in the away match, and I mean Villa away versus Arsenal at home, I'd say those are roughly equivalent, right? And so the tiebreaker might just be that Chelsea are home and hosting Spurs. So, but just to go back,
Cole Palmer is simply in better, much better form than Son. As Son's having a fine season, but Palmer is just like, we've got to take all of our sort of like baggage that we have with Son, and that we love him and he's consistently good throughout the years. Yeah. The form of Palmer cannot be overstated here.
No, it's true. Colton, what's his middle name? Colton Peevish Palmer. It's a great name. Colton Peevish Palmer. So we all got Palmer. and that's great because he's cheap and he doesn't. He's not going to break. Honestly, nobody from Spurs will really break your bank this season, which is kind of useful, right? So, so once you get Palmer, then I think the next question that we must answer is: are we going to stomach having Nicolas Jackson in our teams? For a lot of us, Nicolas Jackson is this incredibly disappointing player, right? Who is kind of like universally owned going into the season, blanked, got 1 pointers. Didn't just blank, got 1 pointers in 5 of his first 6 matches.
Imagine Darwin Nunez, but worse.
Yeah, it was just a catastrophe, right? So, but he has slowly, so very slowly, Brandon, pieced together a like Chris Wood level season, right? With he's got 10 goals and 10 goals, 5 assists, right? It's like that's like your like Chris Wood level, mid-level forward, is coming off a 14-pointer in Everton. Oh, Gren and Everton, not great, but still, 14-pointer is a 14-pointer. That's an excellent return, a goal and 2 assists. Could have had another goal if he had been able to effectively steal the ball from Cole Palmer. That was didn't get that chance, and so he could be on even more. But he has kind of slowly but surely picked up. It's like a goal here, a goal there, right? Scored at home to Newcastle in 28. Scored away to Brentford in 27. Picked up an assist away to Man City. It's like so it's not like he's just scoring really well when they play the worst teams in the Premier League at home, right? He has been able to pick up returns here and there. He's also fairly locked into the squad. I mean, Nkunku is back to playing a little bit, but I think Nkunku is really not anyone that we can really. He just can't be on our radar at the moment, right?
Correct.
It's just, the season it's like a lost season for him, right? It's like
I don't see there seems to be no benefit for Chelsea to rush Nkunku. He doesn't need minutes this season. Yeah. What he needs is like a ramp up over the summer to get into full fitness. Now, match fitness is something he's just going to lose over the summer. So I think that's something he gets in the off season.
Yeah, so I think Jackson is a relatively safe bet from that view through that lens. So I mean, what do you think? Like, are you where are you on Nicolas Jackson?
I'm not into it. I feel like I'd rather try to stretch to Ollie Watkins if I'm going to do that. Now I just have and somebody like Conor Gallagher. Compare Conor Gallagher to Nicolas Jackson.
We call him Koga on this podcast.
Koga, Koga. Everybody do the conga. I like the conga line a little bit better. I just like that better maybe as a budget pick. So then you could maybe get somebody who you actually think you're going to get real points from, like Ollie Watkins. But what I'm opting for is to spend more money on Man City than I probably ought to, and I have a third striker between Haaland and Isak, where I have Carlton Morris right now, who is just kind of like dead weight. I haven't figured out what to do with that spot, but I don't see the value in spending that money there on Nico Jackson. Now, maybe that goes back to my earlier point of I need to start thinking about this wild card in stages in like game week chunks where it's Nico Jackson for game week 35 and then I get rid of him. Maybe I even take a -4 in 36.
But I mean, but then he doubles in 37. So I mean, you can take a -4 to drop a double game week or like not like
So that's kind of like why I feel like if I don't want him at any stage, then I shouldn't have him now.
Yeah. If you don't want him at his, if you don't want me at my double game week,
I really think these are bad fixtures for Chelsea at the end of the day. Arsenal and Spurs. I mean, Spurs are just like their form has been as odd as Chelsea's has in the recent months. So it's kind of like comparing apples to apples. But I hate these fixtures for Chelsea.
Okay, so let's play this out. Let's say that you want to go with like a 3-5-2, but because we still have our bench boost, you want a third forward, right?
Yeah.
So I think that when we look at the teams that play twice, I suppose the only one that you could maybe consider would be
Rasmus Højlund.
It would be Rasmus Højlund. And I mean, he's obviously just been utterly anonymous, right? I mean, he hasn't scored since game week 20. He had a nice run there. Like, he had 3 double-digit returns in 5. I mean, obviously he got injured and he came back and hasn't really been able to do anything since then.
It's funny to compare Højlund to Nicolas Jackson because, we just don't think about Højlund. I don't recall ever watching a Manchester United match and thinking, well, Højlund is terrible here, or he's missing an opportunity. I actually like his presence on the pitch. There's something about the disarray around him with his teammates that's not working. But then when you watch Chelsea and Nicolas Jackson play, you're like, I kind of hate what Nicolas Jackson is doing here.
Well, that's interesting. So if you looked at Højlund instead, right, he's expensive enough that you would probably just play him, right? Partially because in 35 they have Burnley at home, and in 37 they have Arsenal and Newcastle at home as well. Now, not the easiest fixtures, but again, that's 3 home fixtures, right? In double 30, and in 35, and then the 2 in 37. And so if you're going to have a forward that you don't necessarily trust, you typically want them to be in home matches, right? Because they're just home teams that they tend to score a little better, and sort of like, it's like a thing like in college sports where it's like rookies don't travel or something like that. It's like basically like, it's like the younger players just aren't quite ready for what it's like to be in a hostile environment, right? And like, it's sort of, and Højlund I think is probably a little more trustworthy in some of these home matches. So I think that's fine. I mean, what would ideally you'd want to see him do something on Wednesday, right, before you really considered him. Totally. And I think that would be the question.
What do you think about Nicolas Jackson? Is he like nailed on in a wild card for you?
Certainly not nailed. I mean, I think you're right that. I mean, listen, do I think he sucks? Yeah, I do. I like the math of it, though, right? I mean, I like the idea of having a forward who plays 6 times in 4 weeks. Like, I know that 2 points doubled is just 4, but like, maybe there's an opportunity there to, I don't know, go off a little bit. I'm also like, I'm kind of chasing like big returns here too. I don't even know what my goals should be at this point. Like, let's see how this double game week plays out a little bit. I'm not feeling, as you know, super awesome about things, but like, maybe things will turn around. Maybe Van Dijk will score a hat trick of goals on Wednesday or something. His revenge game against Jordan Pickford.
Philip has just lost the respect of the youth league football team he coaches. He was asked what New England should do in the draft, and his answer was objectively terrible. The Athletic just wrote a great article about this, but Philip doesn't have the Athletic or the respect of a boisterous group of 11-year-olds who once looked up to him. Learn from Philip's error, get the Athletic, and get the info you need to speak draft fluently.
Whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this podcast. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or EE System. If you haven't heard of the EE System, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. At hundreds of locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EE System technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/bluewire to learn more and find a center near you. That's unifydhealing.com/bluewire. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including EE System.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Just a quick nod to the people who aren't wildcarding and just looking for a free transfer going into Game Week 35. Shout out to GP on our Patreon Discord who says, is Darwin to Nicolas Jackson the most on-MFFA transfer of all time?
Yeah, it's up there. It really is. Well, I don't know. I mean, is Darwin an MFFA player? Like Darwin has not. Darwin has been making the Premier League fun again. He's MPLA for sure, right? But or PLFA. I don't know. I got to work on my acronyms. But has he been make fantasy fun again? I don't think so, and I don't think that people who have him in 34 are delighted. It's kind of funny how I actually feel like in general the FPL community has done quite well in 34 so far. So it's sort of myself excluded, sadly, but it's sort of I think people have kind of not made too big of a deal about Salah not starting in this match and Darwin not starting, and because it's sort of
other bright spots, right?
Yeah, there are other bright spots, exactly. But yeah, I mean, it came on. It was kind of funny because Darwin was like offside like seconds after he came on. It was just was classic.
He and Salah were so out of sync when they came on. Salah was hitting the pass too late. Darwin was not like waiting for the pass.
Yeah,
it was comical. It was really bad.
Yeah, and in general, it was a good match. It's another reminder of what Klopp is just so good at finding, like, at bringing these young guys in and playing them more. And I really wish that Arteta would start to do a little more of that earlier on in the season. Right, there was some commentary during Arsenal's match yesterday about how Saka is so beaten down from playing so many minutes, and that but there's nothing they can do at this point, right? It's like you cannot lose, you cannot drop a point at this stage, right? And so it's sort of they just have to keep playing him until he runs out of gas, and in the Euro Cup or something. Hopefully not until after 38. But by the way, do you have so when I was working on my wildcard earlier today, the only Arsenal player I kept was Gabriel, and everybody else had to go, including Saka, and that was kind of sad.
Yeah, I kept everyone except Saliba, but I did sort of hold in the balance. Like, I was like, it could be either of these guys.
We got them cheap, right? And so I bought Saliba at like peak price. So whereas Gabriel, his selling value for me is 5.1 million. It's much lower, right? 5.9 for Saliba.
Yeah, it's so crazy. This wildcard draft, one Arsenal player, and it's a defender, no Liverpool. And no Aston Villa. It seems
no Liverpool. I feel fine with. That's I feel good about that.
I'm just looking at this. I'm like, this team looks suicidal as far as and I think that's the hard thing about this season, and especially the latter half of the season, is we're so cut adrift from our security blankets. Haaland is not very trustworthy at the moment. Salah is not trustworthy. Even like Son and Saka, we're just like gravitating toward Watkins and Palmer and these sort of guys that have just stolen the show. And now playing this wild card, I'm kind of like, wait, am I really just getting rid of all of these these main players in my fantasy life that I've had for years now, and I'm just not going to have any of them?
Well, it's always harder for you, Brandon, because we've mentioned before you have a your BMW tastes, it's, you don't want these compact cars, you want the finest. What did your wife once say, that you wanted everything with a bow on it or something like that? It's like,
sounds like something she'd say.
Yeah. I think you want high class. It's second appearance by her in today's pod.
No, you said it best once, Josh. You said, Brandon always pays full price at J. Crew.
Yeah, that is your style. You're like, I know I could get more points out of a different player, but I don't like him, and I'd rather have Saka at 9.3 million instead.
Yeah.
So let's let's tackle Chelsea and then we'll tackle Spurs, and then we can talk a little more about some of the other clubs. Somehow we've been already talking for almost an hour. So with Chelsea, so we talked about Nicolas Jackson a little bit, and that's maybe comes down to taste to a certain degree, whether you are kind of okay with a kind of ultimately sort of bad striker who could possibly just get a run of form just because he's a forward, right? And forwards play centrally, and he's played in lots of minutes, and he'll get chances, right? Whether he converts them or not, he's going to have some chances, even if they're just rebounds off Cole Palmer shots or something, right? He's going to have some opportunities. So let's look past him, though. Looking at the midfield, I really think you're better off focusing on double game weekers in 37 or avoiding double game weekers entirely and trying to find another spot to, like, I would rather have, like Rodri over any of these midfielders, right? Like give me Man City's defensive midfielder over any of the attacking options in Chelsea.
So,
midfield.
Okay, let me get this straight. So instead of Brennan Johnson, who doubles in 35, you'd rather have Rodri.
We're talking about Chelsea here. No, Spurs
sorry. Okay, yeah.
Spurs are coming. Yeah, no. I would rather have like Madison over. But let's talk about Spurs.
Okay. So to focus on Chelsea is something you'd rather have Rodri over Conor Gallagher.
Madueke, Mudryk. I mean, there's not a lot to pick from.
Right. That's the problem with how Pochettino sets out the Chelsea starting lineup. Is he always plays 3 central midfielders. It's always Caicedo, Fernandez, if fit, and Gallagher. And then it's just kind of a rotating cast of characters around Nicolas Jackson and Palmer. Right now it's Madueke and Palmer and Nico Jackson. And that seems to be
the preferred. Madueke. Yeah, Madueke. I meant Madueke. I was coughing while I said that. That's why it came out that way. So all right. So we don't like any of the options there. I mean, Conor Gallagher, a bit of upside perhaps. He's one of those guys who he's like an Andros Townsend kind of guy, right? Like he will occasionally get a little bit of space outside the 18-yard box, and
he will get amongst it. Is his thing, right?
He's fun. I like Conor Gallagher as a player. Like I think he's fun. He's a fun player to root for. It's like his destiny is to be like the top, like his destiny is to be like a Tom Kearney type, though, isn't it? Right? It's like you should be like a beloved kind of. I don't know. Like I don't. Maybe Kearney isn't quite at this level anymore. But like a kind of talismanic, beloved figure at like a mid-table club. Like that feels like Gallagher's long-term destiny.
Yeah. Well, Tom Kearney's actually won things where Conor Gallagher's he hasn't. Maybe he won like the U16 World Cup or something like that.
What has Kearney won?
He's won the championship. They give you trophies for that.
That's true.
So there you go. Not all players are
like
skilled enough to go down to the lower division to get your trophies. But hey, they all count.
3-time second division champion. So I think we're not seeing a lot outside of Palmer in the midfield. Defensively, sure. Toss a Melo Gusto on your bench. I mean, if you wanted to be different, you could go with Cucurella, who's had lots of minutes and is probably a safe option. But he's 0.5 million more, and he's got a little more competition on the left side, right? Yeah. Like there's at least a chance that like Ben Chilwell could come on in a double game week or something like that. So I think that I think Gusto is the option there because again, I don't see myself starting him, but would I have him for a double? Sure. Right? Like stick him on the bench for a double. That's fine. I mean, the double is at least a little bit better with Forest and Brighton, right? There'll be attacking opportunities for him in those. And then I think it's Petrovic is the other one, right? So it's kind of boring ultimately, right? It's but I think Gusto, well, again, it comes down to Nicolas Jackson to a degree, right? Because if you go with Jackson, then you can only have one of Gusto and one of Gusto and Petrovic. But it's like, do I even want to have 2 defenders from Chelsea? No. I kind of want to have 0, right? So
I think if you the ideal would be to go heavier with the attack. Like I wish I wish we could have no defenders. That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, both Spurs and Chelsea, and we'll move on to Spurs maybe at some point here, is like they don't have Ben or defense this season, and they've struggled with injuries in the defense, both of them.
Well, part of the problem here is when it comes to the keepers is it's really hard to find a cheapie that you can stick on the bench. The cheapest one is really Petrovic, right? Because with Nick Pope back, if he's not quite back yet, he's certainly close enough to being back, unless there's some setback, right? And then sure, you can have the current keeper for Newcastle, Dubravka, right? Yeah. Who I've had. Actually, he's been okay of late. I'll save my slander for the moment. But so if you don't trust Dubravka, which you shouldn't, then you're kind of you want to be doubled up on keepers. You're in a pretty tricky spot because if it depends on how far you want to stretch your money, right? Because a Vicaria Petrovic combination is 9.9 million. Ederson and Petrovic would be 10, right? Onana, even he's 5 million, right? So the Verbruggen would be the cheapest option at 4.4 million. He started, I think, maybe like the last 5 matches for Brighton. But how can you trust a Brighton keeper given how much they've rotated so far this season? And if Brighton have nothing to play for in 37, you're probably getting one start out of him, right? And so if you're only going to get one start out of somebody, let me just pull up, who's got the best single game week in 37. I mean, it's probably Jordan Pickford, honestly, right? Like with the Sheffield match, or I just keep coming back to Pickford, Brandon, or Neto, perhaps. I'm just pulling up the fixture difficulty rating on Hub here for the singlers, but I think I do wonder
about Dubravka though, because the latest quote out of Newcastle was, it was from mid-March. Right. At that point, Nick Pope wasn't even diving yet. He was on the grass, but he wasn't testing his shoulder by diving. And a goalkeeper who's not diving in training is of no risk of coming back into the team sheet. So I'm not sure. I mean, I think we have to consider what Nick Pope's goals might be for the summer and maybe getting into the Euro squad for England.
Well, that's right.
Be shocked to see him, but we just haven't seen any proof. And I don't know. Dubravka is quite a nice option.
I think that's really that. I think that would be a reason for him. I mean, I think he's still second. He's certainly still second choice to Pickford, right? But you want to at least be in the squad, right? Yeah. Like, and if he doesn't play a minute down the stretch,
want a free hotel stay.
Yeah, exactly. Where is I guess I can't remember. Where is Euro 2024, Brandon?
Euros 2024 is it in England?
That's what I thought for a second too, but I didn't feel confident enough to say it. I was hoping
where was Germany? Know. Germany is where it will be held.
Germany,
Rhineland.
Well, it's beautiful country, especially in the summer. It'd be great, So you can go have some Kolsch, and that sounds awesome. So, all right. So Pope. So I think Pope will be back. At the very least, it makes it. It just makes me feel a little nervous about having. It would just be super annoying to have to make a goalkeeper transfer in 37, right? To like before a bench boost.
It would be, yes.
So then, actually, you were talking earlier about bench boosting in 35 and just kind of being done with it because you at least know what you were dealing with. But and I suppose that if you did that, you probably would be safe with Dubravka because and they play Sheffield United at home, so maybe there's an argument for that.
Interesting.
You're not going to do it though.
No, it seems silly, I guess.
6 teams played twice in 37. You got to roll the dice, right?
At this point, we've got to go for the doubles.
Hope you get 2 6s. Yeah, exactly.
And again, like as we spend more time on Chelsea and Spurs, I don't love this double in 35. I think it's 2 really unpredictable teams who have some tough fixtures.
I think you might have talked me into reconsidering Jackson a little bit. I want to think about it a little more. I want to see what Højlund does at midweek, and I think if Højlund does well, then I probably will do the Petrovic Gusto double, which I'm not hugely enthusiastic about, but which I think does make some sense. Sure. So because you do ideally want to have a keeper that plays twice. I mean, just I don't know. It seems more fun.
Well, because they don't get points. Like, just have them play minutes. That seems like the only way the keepers get points anymore.
Unless you were as idiotic as me and went for Dean Henderson, who was down negative points in double game week. It's, oh my God, what a disaster. Maybe he doesn't even start now in the second leg. He's so bad. I knew that match was just such a disaster, because as somebody who was basically like 50-50. Actually, at the start of Friday, I was probably like 90-10 in terms of planning to bring in Mateta. And then I sort of like, it wasn't even like that afraid to take the hit. I've taken plenty of hits this season, but I was just like, if I'm going to get 2 starts out of Semenyo, right? It felt like maybe it was like, maybe I was like, am I talking myself into Mateta here? And so for that match to start off with Mateta getting like a goal and assist, they're up 4-0, and then conceding a goal in the first shot they faced in the match. It was just like such a disaster. So anyway, I don't want to keep banging on this drum. So let's move on to Spurs, though, Brandon. The other team that played twice in 35, Spurs, again, are pull them up again here. They are home to Arsenal, away to Chelsea. So, excellent attacking opportunity. Is it? I mean, I don't know. Like, is it excellent? They're a team that attacks. Let's say that. Let's keep it from. I don't need to go over my skis here. They're a team that attacks. They should create chances and likely goals in both of these matches, and maybe more in the Chelsea match than in the Arsenal home game.
I would think so. Yeah, the Chelsea match will probably be a more open one. If we know anything about Arteta's Arsenal, they'll probably control a lot of the match, and Spurs will set up to spring a counterattack and hopefully break it up in the midfield and get Son and Werner and Johnson flying at the goal.
Yeah, it's a tricky end. I mean, battling for fourth with whether it matters ultimately for the Champions League or not, but battling with Villa, you'd certainly prefer Villa's running. I mean, even with the extra legs, Spurs have to play Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, and Man City in their next 5 fixtures. I could say really.
Yeah, and they have no real form to speak of. Where Aston Villa, even though they do have to fight on the Europa Conference League front. Yeah, that Conference League has also brought them into form and given them a lot of confidence. They're just playing so well.
There was a player, or there was an FPL player earlier who had a thread about. I'll put him up here just to give him a shout. FPL Jez at FPL JEZ had this thread about Spurs players. And I thought it was insightful, if only because it reminded me how Spurs, like every other team in the Premier League, have like half of their players injured right now. It's like it's so ridiculous. And so it really is tricky. It's similar to Chelsea. I think a little bit easier, because I think there are some players that have some more kind of historic kind of returns, right? Like they're a little more trustworthy. Even someone like Brennan Johnson at least is a little more of a known quantity. And so I think that I think that the tricky thing is, again, it's a little bit like Chelsea. You really don't want any defenders if you can avoid it, right? Outside of maybe Vicario, who's terrific. I mean, Vicario's had a great season. He's not keeping a lot of clean sheets, but he gets a ton of saves, right? You probably get save points from him in every match that he plays, and so that's
something that bears mentioning too. Of course, came out this weekend that Destiny Udogie is out for the rest of the season, unfortunately.
Yes.
So this is going to disrupt the chemistry of the back line. Yep. I don't know. Is it Emerson? I forget which side Emerson Royale plays on.
He's a right winger. Yeah.
Not the worst backup option, but still you have to take that into consideration. A team that doesn't keep clean sheets regularly and now has that kind of disruption. And then what's the knock-on effect to the attack from Spurs that relies so heavily on getting numbers from the fullbacks, whether it's Porro or Udogie? Now what's the prospect of Spurs in these doubles?
Well, and Porro's flagged, right? So we should know more in the coming days, right? Like whether he'll be okay. I mean, we're in an interesting spot with Spurs too, because it's really like a reset for them ahead of the stretch run, having this week off, right? Like it's sort of it's a rare opportunity to have 2 weeks this late in the season, right? Where they can just maybe they went to did they go to Dubai or something? That's what Isn't that what Pep always does? He takes him down to Dubai for
wow. Who wouldn't love to just go play in the sand?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just be a team again. It's like like in Top Gun Maverick. Maybe they're playing double football on the beach. You still haven't seen that, have you? Oh my God! You know what? When you come to New York, I think we're gonna have to correct this. We're gonna have some drinks and watch Top Gun Maverick.
All right.
I'm gonna force you to watch.
I don't want to watch it by myself. I'm only watching Top Gun Maverick if I can crack wise and yell at the screen.
Well, yeah, I don't know about yell at the screen.
Well, just make smart remarks. I don't have to yell.
You can
I'll keep my voice down.
It'd be the third time I'm watching it, so I'll have a good sense of what's happening there. Anyway, so where was I? Oh yeah, so right. All right, so they haven't. We have some players that are injured, but we should know more in the coming days. We have no information to really rely on at the moment because they didn't play this weekend because of the way that the FA Cup semis broke. It opened things up for them a little bit. So Porro, we should know more about. As you mentioned, Udogi's out. They haven't really been super strong defensively anyway. Porro, at least he did score a goal in 32, but he has honestly been a pretty rough fantasy asset to own going back to pre-festive fixtures, basically, right? It's been a guy. He was amazing in the spring, fall.
There was a run where you thought the good times would never end, and good Porro was here to stay, and that is such a distant memory now.
Yeah. I think the interesting player, well, there's a couple. There are actually several. I mean, one is Richarlison, who's expected to be back as soon as this weekend. Does he slot right back in or not? I don't know. I mean, this is a little bit of the dilemma with Timo Werner, who's actually honestly played pretty well. Mm-hmm. I mean, doing his Werner things, missing chances and stuff, but he's done
his part.
He's played his part. Exactly. Let's stay positive here on Timo Werner. 2 goals and 4 assists since joining in January. It's not terrible. Mm-hmm. But I think James Maddison is the one who interests me because he is in a very rough run of form. Has not scored a goal since game week 28. Doesn't even have an assist since game week 27, right? So that's like February. So going back quite a long time now for him, and then we haven't seen a lot from him in the pitch either. But he is a very high upside player potentially, right? Like he's the kind of player who, in a double game week, could go off, get you 15 plus points, right, across 2 matches. Wouldn't take much, right? A couple chances created, free kick goal, right? I know I'm mapping out like a best case scenario here, but like there's a best case version of him that makes him like one of the best players to have in 35 and 37. And I will say, even though their 35 isn't that great, their 37 is better, right? If only because they have Burnley at home in one of those 2 legs, right? The other one is Man City at home, but they've kind of had Man City's number a little bit,
sure do.
Of late. So I think they could at least, score a goal in that one, if nothing else. So, so I do kind of like Maddison as another option. Again, it's just sort of defaulting to a player that I think has a lot of upside. I think the other player that interests me is Brennan Johnson, who is 5.8 million, seems to have won the spot, right, from Kulusevski on the right-hand wing. I worry a little bit about him getting 2 starts in these doubles, right? Like I think that's a little. I don't know that we would see that. I kind of would see Kulu maybe getting a start in one of those legs at least. I don't know, right? I mean, has he so firmly secured that position that with 5 matches in 3 game weeks, he's going to start all 5 of those? I mean, I think Son and Madison both could. I don't know that Johnson.
Why? I would say yes. Brennan could start them all if he's won the spot. It's not like there's a fixture pile up for Spurs. They have no other competitions other than the Premier League, and I think the continuity does help if they're driving at Aston Villa and trying to overtake them for.
You could get tired from that double football on the beach.
Sure, yeah. How hard does he go in Dubai? There's no way for us to know. We need boots on the ground there. That would be really helpful.
Yeah,
but I think this is contentious amongst Spurs fans or just Premier League watchers. Like, where is Kulusevski and why hasn't he gotten more minutes? It's not like Spurs have been flying and that Brennan Johnson is like unimpeachable in the way that he plays and the way like whatever chemistry you might have with Son. Kulu is like, when he's good, he's amazing. He can be the best player on the pitch. So I think I'd be worried if I bought Brennan Johnson in for game week 35 and then like Kulu came in and showed us something, then I would be
so you're not high end Johnson as an option.
I don't think so.
If you had to do it over again, you would have wildcarded in like 30, right? Like
I really would.
I hate you hate these two teams, yeah.
I kind of think like Newcastle's the only team that I actually like or have a read on going into this. Like just
one of the most inconsistent teams this season.
But I feel like similar to like our feeling about Crystal Palace coming into game week 34 was like, oh, okay, I get it now.
No, I'm not really ragging on you because I kind of agree, but it's just kind of funny that's how it's worked out.
I feel like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth with Brennan Johnson, though, where I'm kind of like, I have faith that he's going to get the minutes over Kulusevski. Yeah. But then I have to stop and think like, well, am I actually going to get this guy? And I don't think I will.
Yeah.
I think if Porro is fit, then I think I want Porro, Vicario, and Son. Is kind of where I would lean there with Spurs.
Yeah. It's just funny, isn't that? Like suddenly you'd have like Gusto. Would you have the double defense from Chelsea then too? Do you think would you, or just one?
Perhaps. Perhaps I would. I mean, it doesn't, just none of this makes sense is kind of what I'm saying. But when you start looking at a team that you build that's just full on Chelsea and Spurs attack, I think you leave yourself pretty vulnerable coming out of game week 35. And that's why I feel like the defensive assets are ones that you can, all right, you just throw them all in your team now, and then you have them when game week 37 comes around. Because I don't really care which defenders I have, because they're all bad.
Yeah, I was. I think the defender question is kind of interesting. I was tooling around on review, as is my want. We're always happy to give them a free shout out here in the pod, and I'm a paying supporter of them. I put my money where my mouth is on that, Brandon. But I think when you look at the defensive assets, whether you're looking at keepers or defenders, it's to me it's interesting that like the top handful of options are. There's 2 injured players and 1 player on a team that doesn't have a single double the rest of the season. Like it's in Porro, Trent, and Trippier, right? It's like there's a lot of who knows? Like if everything breaks right, this could be good. It's there's a lot of risk. Trippier is another one where it's like maybe he's okay by the weekend. Maybe we'll know more on Wednesday. There's a lot of doubt. I mean, I am going to wildcard for sure. Like it's going to happen this week, but I haven't pulled the trigger yet because I don't want to lose all the team value as I start to tool around.
So many unanswered questions at this point that we don't want to start just jettisoning players with value without a real idea of what we're going to do here. Exactly.
So I know, and I can't take too many price rises on the chin, unfortunately, given my team value. So I'm going to have to move by tomorrow. But I have an 8-hour flight ahead of me tomorrow, so that's a great opportunity to pay for the Wi-Fi. You get that in-flight Wi-Fi for the whole flight, Brandon, and just
so reliable, so fast.
Top Gun Maverick. Maybe I'll watch it a 3rd time before I watch it a 4th time with you. And just
record a commentary track, and then I can you can shoot that my way. That'd be great.
Yeah, exactly. So but I think that it's there aren't a lot of great defensive options. So in general, and I just was feeling that way today too. Having Virgil van Dijk, it's such a laugh because I'm just like, what? Why? Like, why am I spending any money on defenders this season? Outside Arsenal have been worth it. Everybody else has been an absolute joke, including Man City, the second best defense in the league. From a fantasy perspective, they have been unownable, their players, right? Yeah, you get an occasional Gvardiol, kind of fluky goal assist in the 85th minute.
Oh, you had to wait for it. You had to wait half a year for this guy to start getting
well,
going.
Speaking of defenders, Gvardiol is an interesting one, right? Because he's finally started to show. You were really high on him. Mm-hmm. I know I often jokingly talk about your boys or whatever, but you were really high on him at the start of the season. He didn't quite kind of realize his potential for a while there, in and out of the squad, battled an injury in the winter, but has started to seem a little more secure in that squad, right? As Pep defenders are never super secure. I think if I had to pick just one, I actually lean towards Akanji as the option, just because he's versatile enough that you could slot him into a bunch of different positions. But if you're going to have a Spurs or a Man City defender, you just have to accept that there's some risk there.
I actually brought in Kyle Walker in my mock wildcard draft, kind of hunting around for the secure player. And, he had his run-ins with the press and then an injury, but I feel like he's back. And there was, for much of the season, he was undroppable by Pep.
That's true.
Guardiola, what's not to love about this guy? Like an attacking center back who's playing in this fullback position, and he couldn't get it going at the start of the season. And you wonder if now that he's found his shooting boots, that it just keeps happening.
And it feels like there's less competition. I mean, Ake is never super impressive when he plays as a left back. And I think the one concern with Kyle Walker, and I know you and I were just sort of mocking, we're tooling around this afternoon, right? We don't have full on, I feel great about this mock-ups to show you. And honestly, it's pretty hard to do, and there's still, 6 fixtures left to play and 34. But I think the one concern I'd have with Walker, it's not even that he hasn't played in several weeks because of the injury, but it's just that Rico Lewis has been playing super well, right? And the concern, I guess, would just be, is Rico Lewis really not going to get any starts the rest of the season?
I think you're creating a problem there where there is none. I mean, Kyle Walker played, ill-fatedly in the Champions League. He played the full 90 against Chelsea in the FA Cup semifinal. Where's Rico Lewis? He's nowhere. That guy is, and you know how Pep just treats young players. He's happy to give them this window of time and play them, and then throw them on the bench for the rest of the season. So and Kyle Walker will wear the captain's armband. I think he represents much more security than any other defender.
All right. Well, we have lots more. I don't want to get too into the Man City talk. I think that it's they play on Thursday. We'll have more information then, where we can go into a little bit. We have talked a bit about Spurs, or excuse me, a bit about Newcastle already. Why don't we end our Game Week 35 talk with a little bit of Man United talk here, Brandon? We talked about Højlund already. What do you think about the midfield, though? I mean, you've got Bruno and Garnacho. I suppose those would be the kind of two options that we'd have to consider. Bruno has honestly been an extraordinary fantasy asset the last few weeks, and no one is talking about him. Yeah. He's at 11.9% owned, which is, considering that Man United players are at a baseline always 15% owned. It shows the kind of season they've had. You were talking earlier about watching them, and it's crazy. I feel like I try to keep up on everything, of course, because of the pod, but I feel like I have not sat down and watched very much Man United the last few weeks. I don't know if their matches have been, I don't know. It's just they just fell off the fantasy radar so much, for so long. But then you look at Bruno's, not even the FA Cup, right? Where he has was it a brace? And I can't remember what his, I think he scored twice, right? In the match. And
in the Coventry match?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, he scored a pen. And he scored an open play. He had the assist to Harry Maguire. He scored sort of on a rebounded play.
Right. That's what I'm thinking of. Right. Yeah.
And then so Bruno just just to put our fantasy real fantasy manager hats back on. This guy's going to play 180 minutes. He's on pens and he's back in form, and he is surrounded by a bunch of very unreliable others. Now, if you look at the trajectory of a bunch of clowns, if you look at the Coventry match, Ten Hag has been trying to get Antony back into the swing of things. As soon as Antony comes on for Garnacho in the Coventry match, guess what happens? They concede 3 goals. Now, I couldn't sit here and say that he's responsible for all 3 goals. Yeah. But it's
the whole Antony thing is just Ten Hag, he stuck his neck out on a guy that everyone was kind of inclined to just be go screw, get out of here.
Sure.
And it's like, it has not worked. It's been a disaster.
So I don't want to, just take a stray there, Anthony. The reason I bring that up is that Garnacho, I think, is the second guy next to Bruno because nothing else is really working. Rashford isn't working. Anthony isn't working. Højlund, as we've said, has been fine, but still kind of anonymous as far as goal involvement. So I think we've have so many midfielders now to think about if we're on wildcard. But if I'm going to double up in the, you have to choose between Højlund or Garnacho. I think Garnacho is probably the more reliable and the more affordable fantasy asset now.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, I didn't think we'd have this much Højlund talk on the pod, but I mean, maybe if he blanks in the Sheffield United match, he will not be in my squad, Brendan. I'll say that much. I need to see him against the worst before I'll consider him against other competition. I think that Garnacho is hugely appealing as a fifth midfielder, right? Stick him at the end of the bench. He's $5 million. Yeah, $5 million. So you'd get him for honestly, if it'd be tempting to start him in 35 as well, which it kind of depends on what your team ultimately looks like, right? Just because it is Burnley at home in 35, but on a bench boost, having a $5 million midfielder across two matches, even if he only plays, even if he only starts one of them. I mean, it's pretty hard to have a bench boost full of 15 absolute bar none surefire starters, right? Like those players tend to be expensive, right? You've got to be quite good to be an absolute surefire starter. So, I said I don't want to get too. It's actually one of the reasons why the bench boost is a source of frustration, I think, for a lot of people, is they think that they're getting 15 bar none surefire, no doubt starters, and then they all get rotated and people lose their minds, right? But like it's pretty hard to. You get what you pay for, right? There's a reason why Bruno Fernandes is the most expensive player in the squad, right? He's going to play every game.
Now, there is going to be a Kobe Mainu bandwagon because the guy is 4.4 and everyone loves him. He's had a breakout season, but he is not he's just not that fantasy asset. I feel like he's had some good moments, but I'm not banking on him getting attacking returns in any match. Yeah,
it's tricky. I mean, he's been a pretty consistent starter going back to, looks like game week 17. So, but it's not, but again, 2 goals, 0 assists. It's not like he's been, it's not even like young Raheem Sterling, right? Where it was like you started to, well, maybe it is actually, maybe that's a little bit like that. Like it's sort of a young, I'm thinking when I say young Raheem Sterling, I'm thinking about Raheem Sterling when he was like a sub 5 million Liverpool player way back when, right? And it was like he started to, it's like when Rodgers was there, I think, right? And he started to show some potential, but it was like, and so like you could kind of stick him on your bench, but I don't know that he's quite.
Different
I think
there's
right? More options. Yeah, exactly. So I think I'm with you. I think Garnacho feels a little more fun, probably a little more upside as well in terms of just. I mean, he's got 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3 different times this season he scored 14 or more points, right? And that's a pretty awesome return for a non-penalty taking $5 million midfielder. And so if the potential is there for you to maybe get 18 points out of Garnacho on a bench boost, that's pretty appealing. So yeah, defensively, I think it's pretty tough, right? I mean, practically everybody is injured in the defense, and it's just Onana has some appeal just because he's honestly one of the cheaper double game week keepers you could have, for 35.
Yeah, I just
37.
I feel like you're bringing a defensive asset in especially for us, if you're bench boosting in 37, you're bringing him in for 37. And this is when things, even though they have the double, it's like the worst for Manchester United. Yeah. It's Arsenal and Newcastle. Now, who knows what version of Newcastle we get, and Newcastle will be playing at Old Trafford. They're better at home this season, Newcastle are.
Yeah.
But still, I don't like the Onana pick. I don't like any of the defenders here much at all. Like Manchester United just feel like they're a team where if you got two of them, you're good. Maybe you're overextended.
Yeah. Again, so this is where this gets back to what we were talking about earlier, which is that when you start to look at all of these teams that play twice, you suddenly find yourself in a position where having two Newcastle defenders feels very appealing, because you're like, I can just start him, right? I can stick a couple of those guys out there. They've got a little bit of, especially Schär, a little bit of goal threat, some decent fixtures coming up. And it just makes more sense than like having, Nana or Dalla or one of these other options.
Anthony Gordon at home against Sheffield United in game week 35. Have some of that.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Brandon. I do. I don't know what I'm going to do either. I think there's a lot to consider. I wish my flight was even longer. I wish it was a 20-hour
You're
flight.
going to need to just get around, there's that Dave Edgar's novel, You Shall Know Our Velocity, where he buys this plane ticket. It's like, so long as you keep traveling in the same direction, you can just keep going forever.
Yeah, exactly. Come back around to New York. Yeah, exactly. So, but I think, we've honestly gone pretty long here because there's just so much to think through and consider. And it's exciting because there does feel like there are a lot of different ways you can go. Haaland, we can't even really, Man City, I'd say in general, are just kind of hard to talk about, right? Let's make sure that Haaland is okay and plays on Thursday, and then we can kind of evaluate the rest of the squad from there, right? I mean, if Haaland has some genuine long-term injury, which again I don't think is the case, but let's wait and see. Then Alvarez obviously comes in, and that changes the equation, right? Because it just frees up a ton of money.
Wouldn't that be convenient? That'd be convenient for everybody.
Yeah. So I guess final question on. Let's see if there's any. Is there any news from Pep specifically about Haaland that we can give to people while we're?
Well, sure. I've got premierinjuries.com, Ben Dinnery's site up right now, and the latest is a quote from Pep from April 19th. So Friday's press conference. Pep on Haaland says, "I don't know. I'm not a doctor." Jeez, what?
Yeah,
what
I've got a newer.
Is.
I've got a newer one then. So yesterday he said he's injured. I don't think it's much, but he's not available for today. I don't know if he'll be back for the next game.
God, has there ever been a more I don't want to talk about it guy than Pep Guardiola?
I love it. I've come to really admire it. The thing is, he has to give, because they're in like 9 cup competitions every year. Like, he probably has to give more press conferences than any other manager, right? Yeah. Like he must spend several hours a week talking to the same Manchester Evening News guys, just like
who was the NBA guy? Was it Rasheed Wallace who said both teams played hard?
Yeah, that was like
his response to every press conference question. Yeah, that was brilliant. I feel like you need to adopt, instead of going like full Klopp and just like screaming at everyone, just adopt a pat phrase that you can just roll out for every question. I don't know. Both teams played hard.
All right. So on 35, though, so we've got a lot to thinking to do. And I think the captaincy is just really easy this week. I think you've got to go Cole Palmer. And I like the idea of swerving on captaincy. I did it myself this week in 34. But he's just the player I most want to captain in 35. Yeah. I don't want to. It'd be annoying because I like him. I've had him for so long. And for me to not captain him in the hopes that he fails, it just doesn't feel. That actually feels very un-MFA. Wow, just can't get it out there, Brennan. But MFFA to me.
Mixed martial arts and FPL, they don't mix, Josh.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like my strategy, if somebody comes to the Always Cheating pod always at the end of the season and says, like, what's the best way for me to like jump the ranks? And I always feel like captaincy differential is the thing you do instead of like getting all different players. However, like my feeling this season is like there's no real template at the moment. Therefore, the captaincy feels like you just like don't stress about the captaincy so much.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think at some point you've got to just accept that that you're not going to make up 80 points. I mean, it's it's like you got to like keep your chin up, right? It's like finish the season with dignity and just make up as much ground as you can.
Sure.
All right. Well, that's your pod. Thank you everyone for listening. I'm going to be gone for next week's pod, although Brendan has a special guest lined up already. So that'll be fun. I know Patreon pod this week. Are you going to do a solo one? Or
I'll find a way to get a Patreon pod going for all of our supporters, and I'll talk through what my final decisions are for my wild card. And Josh, send me like a screen cap. That's a screen grab from your wild card, and I can let people know what you're doing.
I'm pretty sure they have internet in Europe. We'll see.
Hopefully,
we'll see. Yeah,
make sure you bring one of those like little doohickey pluggy thingies, and then you'll be fine.
I know. I actually don't know if I actually think my wife bought a couple of those. So, all right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Have a great week. Have a great rest of your double game week. Sorry if I was too. I'm taking it seriously, and I'm not. I don't want people to think I'm like I'm too upset about it. It's all good. I think it's just I get frustrated. I have to come on the pod and rant sometimes, and then I get it out of my system. So good luck to everybody the rest of 34 though, and we'll talk to you soon. Oh, Brandon, do you want to thank our producer patrons?
Yes, of course. We can't leave without thanking our producers, and of course, if you want more information about how you can become a producer or support the pod just by saying thank you, go to patreon.com/alwayscheating. Thanks to our producers, Mike DePietro, Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, Babas Kuhn, James Holland, Dave Wagner, Lodahl, Nick Wright, Lazarus Llanos, Jesse Halstead, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin. Great to see Chris and Brian in the chat and the YouTube today. Blair Jacobson, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock at FPL Merch, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Buffalo Wild Mings, Francis Moore, Sam Shower, Caleb Robbie, Volger, Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcomb, James Keatley, The Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, Shalon F. Kadakia, Terrence O'Donnell, Heath Cram, Thomas Tislop, Noah and Louise, Travis Grant, Linus Vennerstrom, Dan Parsons, James C. Matthew Skinner, Fred Jacobson, Brennan, Daniel Hart, Lolly, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, Gareth H., Rune Sandberg, Brian Clark, and James Murray Wood. Listen, if Patreon isn't your thing, it also helps us if you rate, review, or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media. Visit our website, alwayscheating.com. Bon voyage, Josh. I hope it's an incredible time in Rome. Look forward to hearing all about it when you get back.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. And have a great week, everybody. And good luck the rest of Game Week 34. Talk to you soon. Bye.